The village sat nestled among rolling hills, a patchwork of green fields and winding paths shaded by ancient trees. It was a place where the wisdom of ancestors guided the living, and every dawn carried whispers of stories passed down through generations. The people of the village prided themselves on their unity, and the bonds of family were cherished above all else. Nyasha, the younger of two sisters, was a beacon of virtue in this close-knit community. Her days were spent tending to her aging parents, ensuring they were cared for in every way. "It is the duty of a daughter," she often said, her voice calm and unwavering. Her hands, roughened from labor, carried the warmth of someone who gave all she had to others. The villagers admired her humility and her wisdom, often seeking her guidance for disputes or troubles. But Nyasha's life had not always been so solitary. Once, she had shared laughter and dreams with her elder sister Maida. Their bond had been strong, unshaken even by their differences. Yet all of that changed on the day Maida chose to leave the village. "I cannot spend my life here," Maida had declared, her voice carrying both defiance and longing. She stood at the edge of the forest, her bright clothing fluttering like a bird ready to take flight. "There is a world beyond these hills, and I intend to claim it." Nasha's heart had ached at those words, but she held her sister's hands tightly. "Do not forget us," she had whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This family, this village, we are your roots." Maida had smiled, but it was the kind of smile that did not reach the eyes. "Roots are not enough to build wings," she had replied before turning away. Years passed, and news of Maida's life in the city trickled back to the village. She had married a wealthy merchant, a man whose riches dazzled even the elders when they heard of them. Yet no amount of wealth could fill the silence she left behind. Nyasha took on the responsibilities Maida had abandoned, becoming the family's pillar without complaint. Mohans was Leah. When Maida returned one fateful season, the villagers gathered in curiosity. She arrived in a grand carriage, her clothes shimmering in colors that seemed too bright for the village's humble paths. She greeted everyone with smiles, though her gaze lingered on Nyasha with a mix of admiration and something else, something sharp and restless. "You look well, Nyasha," Maida said, embracing her sister. Her tone was warm, but there was an edge to her words. "You've done much for the family in my absence." Nyasha smiled gently, choosing to see only the affection in her sister's voice. "We do what we must for those we love." Maida's stories of city life enchanted the villagers, but Nyasha noticed the small ways her sister's charm began to pull at the fabric of their unity. Maida's comments, though seemingly harmless, often drew quiet comparisons. "If only we had more like Maida to show us the world beyond these hills," one villager remarked after hearing of her travels. Nyasha said nothing, but the weight of those words settled in her chest. The tension between the sisters grew slowly, like a vine creeping over a wall. Maida's laughter sometimes carried a note of mockery, her praise tinged with subtle criticisms. "You are so selfless, Nyasha," she said one evening, her voice soft as the fire crackled between them. "But don't you ever wish for more? For something beyond this?" Nyasha met her sister's gaze steadily. "Contentment is a gift, Maida. Not everyone finds it in the same place." The rift widened further when the village elder announced Nyasha as the host for the upcoming sacred ritual, a position of great honor. "Your unwavering dedication has set you apart," the elder said, his voice carrying the weight of tradition. You will lead us in this ceremony, as is your right." The villagers cheered, but Maida's face darkened. She forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed her true feelings. That night, as Nyasha prepared offerings for the ceremony, Maida watched her from the shadows. The glow of the firelight cast long, flickering shadows across the walls, mirroring the growing darkness in her heart. Jealousy began to fester within Maida, though she refused to admit it, even to herself. How is it, she thought bitterly, that Nyasha, with her plain life and modest ways, can command such respect? As days passed, Maida's resentment grew, feeding on her insecurities. The village that had once been her home now seemed like a place where she could never belong. Not as long as Nyasha stood as its moral pillar. Though she spoke kindly to her sister, her words carried hidden barbs, each one designed to unsettle. But Nyasha, ever patient, met her sister's harshness with quiet grace, a response that only deepened Nyasha's turmoil. The winds carried whispers of change, and the village, though serene on the surface, began to feel the undercurrents of conflict brewing between the sisters. The bonds that had once united them now seemed strained, as though stretched thin by forces neither could fully control. Yet in the quiet moments of prayer and reflection, Nyasha held fast to her belief that love and forgiveness would prevail, even in the face of her sister's growing hostility. And so, the stage was set for a tale that would test the strength of family, the resilience of virtue, and the unyielding power of forgiveness in a world where envy and love walked side by side. The whispers began like the rustling of leaves before a storm. Maida's words, soft yet sharp, floated through the village. "Nyasha, so perfect in every way," she would say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But sometimes, perfection hides its flaws. Her tone was sweet, but her words carried the sting of a scorpion. The villagers, once unwavering in their admiration for Nyasha, began to murmur amongst themselves. "Do you think it's true that Nyasha looks down on the rest of us?" one asked. Another shook her head but admitted, "It's strange how quickly she was chosen for the sacred ritual, almost as if it were prearranged." Doubt, like a shadow, began to creep into their hearts. Nyasha noticed the shift. The smiles of the villagers were less bright, their greetings more hesitant. She heard the faint murmurs but chose not to confront them. "The truth is as steady as the river," she told herself. "It will always find its way." Instead of anger, she responded with kindness, helping wherever she could and offering wisdom when asked. Yet she could not ignore the growing bitterness in her sister's gaze. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Maida sat alone, staring into the dying embers of the fire. Her mind wandered to an old tale the elders often told, of two brothers, one favored by the gods and the other consumed by jealousy. In the end, the jealous brother had betrayed his kin, bringing ruin upon himself. The story, once a warning, now took root in Maida's heart as a twisted source of inspiration. Why must Nyasha always be the one they admire? She thought bitterly. Her envy grew like a thorny vine, choking any love she had once felt. If she were gone, perhaps they would see me. Determined, Maida sought out the village herbalist. She wrapped herself in a shawl and approached the elder woman under the guise of needing remedies for restlessness. "I cannot sleep," Maida lied, her voice trembling with feigned weariness. "Please, give me something to calm my mind." The herbalist, wise and observant, handed her a bundle of herbs but paused. "Your spirit is heavy, Maida. Beware of the weight you carry. It may crush you if you are not careful." Maida forced a smile. "Thank you, elder. Your wisdom is a gift." But her heart raced as she concealed a vial of potent poison she had secretly requested earlier. It was a poison known only in hushed whispers, powerful enough to take a life without leaving a trace. The following evening, Maida approached Nyasha with a tray of tea. "Sister," she said, her voice unusually soft, "I've been unfair to you. Let us share tea and talk like we used to." Her eyes glistened with crocodile tears, masking her true intentions. Nyasha, ever trusting, smiled warmly. "It's never too late to mend a bond, Maida. Let us sit and remember the days of our youth." She took the offered cup, its fragrant steam curling into the cool night air. As Nyasha lifted the cup to her lips, Maida watched intently, her heart pounding. "This is it," she thought, her fingers trembling. But as Nyasha sipped, she felt a strange unease, her body reacting almost immediately. Her chest tightened, her breaths shallow. The world seemed to tilt, but she held herself upright, her spirit strong even as her body betrayed her. Nada's forced smile faltered. "Sister, are you unwell?" she asked, feigning concern. Nyasha, her voice weak but steady, replied, "Perhaps the tea is too strong for me tonight." She placed the cup down gently, her eyes meeting Maida's for a fleeting moment. Something passed between them, unspoken but undeniable. The effects of the poison were slower than Maida had anticipated. Unbeknownst to her, Nyasha's daily use of medicinal herbs to care for their parents had built a resilience in her body. Though the poison took hold, it did not claim her life. Instead, she fell into a deep, fevered state, her strength waning, but her spirit clinging to life. Maida, in her panic, retreated to her room. Why is she not? The thought refused to complete itself. She paced, her mind racing. Guilt and fear began to creep in, but she pushed them away. "It's done," she whispered to herself, though her voice shook. "It must be done. It must be done." Nyasha lay in her bed, her breaths shallow but steady. The village rallied around her, unaware of the true cause of her illness. The elders prayed, the children sang healing songs, and the women took turns caring for her. Maida, however, remained in the shadows, her heart a battleground of emotions she could no longer suppress. Nyasha lay quietly on her mat, her body weakened by the poison, but her mind sharp as ever. The quiet moments gave her time to observe. Maida's once confident demeanor had crumbled into nervous glances and restless movements. Her hands trembled when she brought water, and her voice faltered when she spoke. Nyasha's thoughts wandered to a story her mother often told, about two sisters. The elder, driven by envy, had poisoned the younger to claim her place in the family. But fate intervened, and the truth was revealed when the elder's guilt consumed her. Nyasha's heart ached at the memory. "Stories are born of truth," she whispered to herself, "and perhaps they warn us because the same shadows linger in every family." Despite the growing suspicion in her heart, Nyasha made a choice. She would not confront Maida. The truth, she believed, was like the river. It could not be hidden forever. "Let the ancestors guide this," she murmured. "I will not soil my hands with anger or blame." The village, too, was troubled. The sight of Nyasha, frail and confined to her bed, cast a shadow over the once lively community. Women gathered in her courtyard to grind millet and sing healing songs. Men fetched water and brought herbs for remedies. Children, usually noisy with games, sat quietly nearby, their small hands clasped in prayer. "She has always cared for us," an elder said solemnly. "Now we must care for her." But while the village united, Maida unraveled. She avoided the communal gatherings and kept to herself, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and guilt. Each kind word from a villager, each gentle smile from Nyasha, felt like a knife twisting in her heart. She began speaking to herself in hushed tones, her hands clutching at her chest. The weight of her actions bore down on her like a heavy stone. One evening, during a gathering to pray for Nyasha's recovery, Maida's behavior reached its breaking point. As the villagers sang, their voices rising with hope, Maida suddenly stood, her face pale and her body trembling. "Stop!" she cried, her voice breaking. The singing ceased, and all eyes turned to her. I cannot bear it anymore," Maida said, tears streaming down her face. "I have wronged my sister. I have wronged all of you. It was I who poisoned her tea." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Some villagers murmured in disbelief, while others stepped back as though Maida's guilt were a tangible thing that could taint them. Nyasha, despite her weakness, raised her hand. "Let her speak," she said softly, her voice steady despite her pale face. Maida fell to her knees, clutching the hem of Nyasha's blanket. "I was blinded by jealousy," she sobbed. "Your kindness, your strength, it made me feel small. I thought if you were gone, I would matter more. But now, I see how wrong I was. Forgive me, Nyasha, please." The elders stepped forward, their faces grave. One of them, an old woman with a voice like the rustling of leaves, spoke. "Maida, your crime is heavy, but so is your remorse. We will convene a council to decide what must be done." The next morning, the village gathered under the great baobab tree, the elders seated in a circle. The air was thick with tension as the people awaited their judgment. One elder began, his voice firm. "Maida's actions cannot go unpunished. Betrayal of family is a wound that cuts deep." In the village church that afternoon, betrayal of family was a wound that cuts deep. Another elder countered, "But has she not confessed? And do we not teach that redemption is possible for those who seek it with sincerity?" The debate grew heated. Some villagers called for banishment, while others pleaded for mercy. Nyasha, listening from her mat, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but carried through the crowd like a gentle breeze. "Let us not forget the roots of our traditions," she said. "Justice is not only about punishment. It is also about healing. Maida has done wrong, but she has also shown regret. If we cast her out, we lose the chance to rebuild what has been broken." The elders, moved by her words, nodded. After much deliberation, they reached a decision. Maida would remain in the village, but would dedicate herself to serving her family and community, proving her remorse through actions rather than words. As the council ended, the villagers dispersed, their hearts heavy but hopeful. Nyasha, though weak, smiled faintly at her sister. "Maida," she said, "it is not too late for us to find our way back to each other." And so, the tale of betrayal turned toward one of redemption. The lessons